Welcome to Never Rewrites. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman. And today we're going to talk about musketeering as a concept and how divide and conquer is the solution.
Hmm.
So, musketeering is this concept where you have well, start with musketeer. So, musketeering from the Three Musketeers, and the idea is when I say it, I want you to think, oh, all for one and one for all. And it's the idea that you have several problems that are difficult but not intractable by themselves. But when you wrap them up all together, they become an unbreakable bond. And that's sort of the idea of the musketeer. They got the creed of all for one and one for all.
Okay.
The example I gave, or the first example in my head was, hey, if you've got a terrible code base, why don't you fix it? Like your cousin,
Hmm.
it's like, well, it's a terrible code base because it's full of bugs, and it's full of bugs because there are no tests. And there are no tests because the code is written in a way that makes it really impossible to write tests. And so people hate working in it because it's buggy, it's slow, and there's side effects everywhere. It's like, oh, well, why are there side effects? It's like, okay, so why don't you write a? It's like, why don't you fix the bugs? Well, we can't fix the bugs because we don't know what this stuff does, and there's all the side effects. So
Right.
okay, so write some tests. Oh, well, I can't write tests because there's all this side effects, and we don't know what's going on, and we don't even know what's right. It's like, okay, well, why don't you define what's right? It's like, well, nobody knows the system. Why does nobody know the system? Because nobody wants to work in it because it's full of bugs. And so
Yeah.
you go round and round.
Right. So, I guess if I were to have that pulled up in front of me, I think you shared a blog post on this recently for Musketeering. I'll read off those two again for the listener. Why can't you fix the bugs? Because testing is nearly impossible, and everything you touch has side effects. Why can't you write tests? Because the code is tightly coupled, which produces side effects. Also, it's full of bugs, so we don't know what the correct functionality is. And then why can't you reduce side effects? Because the code is buggy and there are no tests. If you can't separate the concerns, you can't make progress. So
That's brilliant. I like that guy.
you like that guy. Um, and I can see, I've definitely heard people make these arguments. I think there's flaws in each of the individual
Mm-hmm.
arguments naturally. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have a job in refactoring. Um, but the idea that testing is nearly impossible, I think in almost every case for every project I've worked in, testing can be really difficult,
Mm-hmm.
but there's always a way to test enough of it to de-risk it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to unit test 100% of every branch and if else statement you could think of. But if you can understand enough of what needs to be tested, the happy path, then you can do a pretty good job with many different tools out there. You don't have to write unit tests. You could do the scaffolding approach that we talked about before of just kind of like some acceptance test to patch it until you have better testing.
Sure, and that's where people underestimate just how valuable having any tests
Hmm.
are. Like going from zero tests to one test, even if it's not a very good test, is huge in terms of the progress. And that's
Yeah.
where, so you've got the Musketeers, all of these problems come together, and the divide and conquer is you say, I'm going to put up with the other two, right? It's going to be, so I'm going to write tests in this example. You say, I'm going to write tests. Like, okay, cool. Those tests aren't going to be very good because the code's tightly coupled and you don't know what the correct answers are in a lot of cases. It's like,
Hmm.
yes, I'm going to put up with it. I accept that uncertainty because I need to divide. And
Right.
once I can
Exactly.
divide, then I can conquer.
Hmm.
Right? Divide and conquer is not about working in parallel. Divide and conquer is accepting parts of the bad thing so that you can pull out just a single piece of the problem and attack it.
Right. And even if their argument is, well, we can't write tests because we don't know what the correct behavior is, you don't have to. I mean, if you know how it currently behaves, you just kind of characterize how it currently behaves, then you can at least know how your changes impacted it, show that change set to whoever cares, the product team
Mm-hmm.
or whomever is going to be QAing it. And that will be enough to de-risk it again. The whole point is you're trying to make changes and deliver something, and you need to be able to prove it reasonably works like it's supposed to.
Right.
And reasonably works, asterisk, is something you have to define with somebody, because you can show, if you work with product, you can say, well, how is this thing, how do people use it? How do you know it's broken? Why should we change it? Because if you can't
Right.
answer that, then why are we even touching this?
That's a good call of, hey, if you've got a legacy system that you know is buggy, then by definition, whatever it does today is correct. And your goal isn't to have it do the correct thing. Your goal is to not unintentionally change any of the actions that it does today.
Right.
So if there's a calculation and it comes in and you say 2 + 2 is 5, clearly wrong, but you don't want to accidentally change that.
Right.
And that's where testing, like, okay, yes, I'm going to write this test and it expects it 2 + 2 = 5. And I don't want to accidentally change that.
That's such a great call out, because I've seen so many people, so many other developers go in and see this flawed code and go, oh, what is this doing? And they just start changing things because things look incorrect logically as you're walking through it. But again, if you're changing an input, even if it's 2 + 2 is 5, and that 5 is used somewhere else and things are humming along, you should probably just leave it be. You need to lock that into place to make sure it still behaves the same before you start making changes that every instinct about you might tell you this seems really weird. I should change this while I'm at it. Do not.
No.
The more you change, the more difficult it is to tell what parts are part of the problem.
Right. This is where you add a fix me comment.
Right. That stays there for 7 years.
This is saying that 2 + 2 = 5. Need to find somebody to explain why this makes sense, and you move on. And this is where, where what we're always saying of thesis shipping, iterative development. Write the test that says 2 + 2 = 5. Push that into production. Then go find someone to explain why that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And that's a good call too. Actually, just leaving a comment there. I know we joke about that, like to do fix this or whatever. But if you've already done all the work to go and look at all this, and you spent hours this old code, at least leave a couple of breadcrumbs for the next person passing through that says something like, I don't know why, if I change 2 + 2 to be 4, which is correct in my brain, this breaks. Do not change this until you understand why it impacts downstream logic. That's perfect. Great.
I literally this week I have found breadcrumbs left by me 2 years ago explaining, like, there's a thing that says this statement appears to do nothing, but it's calling a function that has side effects, and I don't know what those side effects do, so I'm not touching it. And I was like, oh, thanks, past me, because I totally was going to delete this thing because it doesn't do anything.
Yeah. So that's a good call out too. So let's see which one of these other ones can we. I guess the idea here is we're killing the Musketeers. We're dividing and conquering.
Right. You've got to divide. If you want to break down the Musketeers, you have to divide and conquer them. And that's a theme actually in the Three Musketeers and the sequels of individually they can all be beaten, but together they stand tall.
They just happen to be evil in this metaphor. They're ugly, tangled code in this metaphor, and they should be defeated.
If you've ever read the books, the Musketeers are not paragons of virtue.
I've actually read the books.
The movies kind of gloss over it, but they're all terrible people.
Oh, great.
And they're all terrible people by the standards of their day, and by our standards today, they're all really terrible people. They're all rapists and things.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
The books
did not
they don't hold up well.
Oh, okay. So yeah, let's defeat this code and divide and conquer it.
Divide and conquer.
All right.
We're going from a French problem with a British solution. It's very historical.
All right. Okay, do we have any other comments about the actual...
No, we've waited far off topic. I think to summarize, it's you have problems, and they can come together to make problems that can be solved individually. They can come together. People will bring them together.
Yeah.
And it's more than anything else. It's that people will bring these problems together to make them unfixable as an excuse for the current state. It's, I can't do anything about the current state because of all these problems. And if you look at them all together as a group, yes, it becomes impossible. It's a Gordian knot. But if you divide and conquer, you say, okay, well, this isn't really one unfixable problem. It's three problems that are tightly interwoven, and let's pull them apart and attack them one at a time. Then they can be.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the call out: is notice that people are bringing multiple problems together. They're musketeering. They're saying all
Right.
for one and one for all. And the solution is divide and conquer. Break the problems apart, attack them individually, and move along with your day.
Right. And I'll say too, just like we had in one of our first episodes about inviting folks on to talk about cases where they challenge the idea of never rewriting.
Mm-hmm.
I also invite anyone to come onto the show with a very difficult, tightly knotted problem that they think cannot be divided and conquered, and we could try to find a way to tear it apart and see if we can come up with a good solution for that.
Yes. It's been too long. We should get some guests.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you all for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.